Good evening, afternoon, could be super early morning depending where you're watching. I can see Ruben has joined this time. I wonder why. Welcome everybody. Welcome to my weekly Wednesday live once again. My name is Juha Ruokangas, as if you would know, but anyways, your humble servant on a mission from the gods, from the goddesses of fretted instruments. It is 9 p.m. here in Finland on October 5th, 2022, I think. And the last time I checked, it was about 11 degrees Celsius. A bit of rain. Yep, winter is coming. How are you guys holding up out there? Not the easiest times for a lot of us. In Finland, as in many parts of Europe, we're struggling with these super high electricity costs, oil costs, gas costs. But in our microcosm here, surrounded mostly by trees instead of human beings, we're holding up fine here. Though, no worries. Fingers crossed our eastern neighbor would come to their senses though. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that. Half a year ago, I had a guest from Germany, Ruben Roeh, flew over, and we had a super fun couple of days here at the shop. We also recorded an interview. The one we're about to see in just a minute, which means, in other words, that the interview itself is not live. You already noticed Ruben is there in chat with you as well, and simultaneously here in Finland being interviewed by me. Yeah, the interview is not live, meaning that Ruben and I cannot react to your questions or comments during the interview, other than in the chat. But keep those comments coming in any case. Yeah, Ruben and I are here, either answering to your questions via the live chat, or we will address the questions later. Okay. Sound good? Let's see who's here. Peter, Greg, Ruben already said hello. Hannu, eksynyt molekyyli. Nice to see you all. Poo Ninja, there. There we are. Some of the familiar voices, names. I can't hear the voices anyways, but I've actually, out of these people here now, I think I may have heard, if not all, most of the voices too, in one or the other occasion along the years. So here we go. Let the interview begin. Ruben, welcome.
Hey.
How are you doing?
Good to be here. I'm awesome.
Ruben is visiting us in Finland. For what reason was it again?
Damn, I don't know. Oh, it could be this. I don't know. It might be. That would be a good reason to come.
We haven't had many guests since the pandemic started.
Yeah,
You're
obviously.
one of the very few ones, which is very cool. We've had super fun couple of days.
Yes, absolutely. So did I. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome, and very happy to have you here. And yeah, so we made this guitar for you.
Yeah, you did. Smash it as good as I can.
It's the third guitar we've made for you. You've had a Mojo Classic.
Well, it's the second you've made for me. It's the third I own.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, the first one I got from you guys, I just got as I found it.
From our dealer, musicianship.
No, privately.
Oh, that's right.
Privately. Yeah.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that the guitar originally went to.
Yes, it did.
Sending regards to
Oh, yeah.
Holger to musicianship. Anyways.
I did play a couple of your guitars at his shop.
Oh, you had?
A while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think this was before that.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, we made you this one now, and you have also become, during the past couple of years, you've become one of the very few pioneers of professional musicians that are actually using a Valbucker powered guitar in your live work, in your session work, and whatever. Yeah.
Across the board, all of the things I do, it's found its way into. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool and very unusual.
Yeah. Well, works. So am I.
Currently, I know of two professional players using Valbucker guitars in their work. You're one of them, and Sonny Landreth. Hello, Sonny. Sonny Landreth is another one. But I have a feeling
intimidating company.
I have a feeling there will be more in time.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
But we're not here today to talk about this guitar.
Though I'm holding it up to just,
Yeah, just to it's a product placement.
It's real subtle.
Yeah, it's product placement. It's the guitar not made by me.
Well, but
per se, made by my company, made by Jyrki.
Yes.
Jyrki
Who did a
Kostamo,
great job on
one
it.
of my senior master luthiers. He's been working with me over 20 years. Makes all our Mojo guitars, amongst other guitars. Yeah. So he has made all three of your. Because you have have the thing for the Mojo models.
I do. Yeah. I do have a thing for the Mojos. Did he also make the classic one that I got?
Yes.
That was made in 2014. I think?
Yeah, definitely by him.
Wow.
Yeah. Jyrki has made basically all the Mojo guitars ever made since 2003. It's hundreds of Mojo guitars he's made.
Well, it would probably be about 388 if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Just venturing a guess here.
That's pretty close. Yeah. No, well, we're here today to talk about your work, and particularly because it's kind of like your work is two things. You play guitar on stage with your band, different kind of projects, whatever you do, but you also teach.
Yeah, and I'll say I don't really consider it two things.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I kind of like, for me, being an artist, teaching is kind of part of the job to some degree. At least if you consider yourself somebody who tries to go away from the beaten path, trying to find something new, sort of out of a, I want to say, transgenerational responsibility.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I always liken it to like science. If every person studying physics would have to invent the wheel by themselves and start from there, civilizationally, we would have never gotten anywhere.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You pass on what you learn, and then the coming generation can build on that. And that's sort of my motivation behind teaching, and has always been. So I kind of consider it part of my job as an artist, really.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes total sense. It's this kind of a similar way as us taking trainees to learn from us, and so on, so to speak. And this is also in our profession. It's pretty common that the senior makers want to pass the knowledge and pass the skills to the next ones. We are, after all, it's a continuum. We are standing on the shoulders of those who were here before us.
Oh, yes. I mean, you and I both were,
Yeah. So I have my teachers without whom I would definitely not be where I am today. So
same.
So that's the way.
Yeah.
All right. So you teach.
Yeah.
As part of your profession. Well, yesterday we had a talk about this, and this is what inspired me to do this interview type of a thing today. You mentioned to me that you have a certain type of a concept of teaching. What did you mean? I told you stop. You were about to explain me yesterday, and I told you to stop.
I hope I still know what I wanted to explain.
Yeah, you need to remember it today because I wanted it to be fresh so I can react to it. Because this is a reaction video.
Yeah. Well, I guess it you kind of have to split it both ways because I teach guitar at college, which is like which is just considered the instrumental major, which is taught one-on-one.
Yeah.
And then I do music theory and ear training lectures, basically. And it's sort of methodically, I suppose you would have to sort of split those two things up because obviously I can't teach them the same way.
Yeah.
If we're talking about guitar,
yeah,
it's really simple actually. Every student coming in is different in a lot of ways, in that they want to play different music, they see themselves in a different place artistically, but also biomechanically, big hands, small hands. You know, I had a student a while ago who couldn't turn his wrist to face the palm of his hand up.
Okay.
He couldn't turn it further than this, which you know, it's so that's a challenge for me to overcome and with him together. So you know, that's what I mean. So it's a very individual approach, and my approach to teaching, I suppose, works really well for some people and not at all for others, because I'm a very like brainy guy, for better and for worse.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of going deep into the biomechanics of playing. Like what's actually happening, what is the body doing, what would be a better way of doing it, what feels natural, depending on your biomechanical predisposition, if you will. And sort of work with the human apparatus that you have and find the best way to do it.
Yeah.
And that is really what I try to do for my students.
Yeah. So it has to do with the idea of fundamentally every one of us trying to find our own way.
Yeah.
Rather than replicating something that like mechanically replicating something that was.
I mean, it depends, you know, because for some people that's what they want out of their musical career, and then it makes sense for them to do that. But my path as an artist for the past couple of years has been about trying to find what I want to sound like and sort of building on the things that I was passed on and trying to, you know, find my own way in that. And that is what I try to do for the students that care, that want to.
Yeah.
Of course, there is sort of a general foundation in terms of knowledge, in terms of like fretboard orientation and technique and stylistic knowledge that I sort of try to make sure everybody has, just to have their bases covered.
Yeah.
But from then on, it's more about developing their artistic personality and their individual sort of, you know, style.
Yeah. So let's say I would want to be your student. Mm-hmm. So what's the first thing you would like? What would we do first?
Well, I mean,
you would determine like how crappy I am as a player, or my level of skills.
I would immediately just invite you for a lesson, because there's no point in trying to screen somebody without them, you know, actually holding a guitar in their hands. Figuring out what they.
So it doesn't very well work as an online thing.
It technically can.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, the whole online teaching, which has been a big thing for me and everybody. Right.
Yeah, the past years.
Over the course of the pandemic, is like if you're at least like an intermediate player, and we're not talking about like the basic mechanics of playing, and we're more on a conceptual, artistic level, I feel that online lessons were great.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think we touched on this yesterday briefly. Like if I still feel like I have to like manually move, you know, your fingers, or be like, you know, maybe go a little more like this, drop your elbow, whatever, then.
Yeah, then it gets hard. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to do, you know, depending on, like, I can't see from all the angles. And it's sometimes really hard to judge what's going on. But, I invite students to just come over, take a lesson, and I let them play. And I've realized that sometimes the idea of just having them play is a very intimidating prospect for them.
Yeah,
like they come in and I'm like, all right, play something. Well, what? I'm like, I don't care. Preferably something you think you can do really well. Yeah. Like something you feel comfortable. With, like something comfortable presenting. And a lot of times they're not comfortable presenting anything at that point.
Yeah.
But, you know, we try to find something, and then it's all about, you know, how they present themselves while playing. What's their posture like? You know.
Yeah. So it's very individual.
It's very
goes. So it's like you go by your kind of gut feeling with
with everyone?
I mean, I kind of look for the same things. I want to say, you know, basic like articulation, and before even that, you know, tension in any part of the playing apparatus. You know, is the elbow glued to the body? Is it flared out? You know, is the wrist bent too far? Or, you know, things like these very basic mechanical things that, even if we do have different physiques, there's general guidelines about. You know, I mean, if I see like a terrible posture, I'm like, I really doubt that feels good to you.
Yeah.
It might, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't look like it feels good.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's kind of what I started getting into. And then a lot of it for me is about orientation, because the guitar, being laid out as it is, you know, with multiples of, you know, the same notes and 6 strings that aren't even tuned in consistent intervals and everything, it's a confusing instrument.
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to a piano, you know, where a chord looks the same wherever you play it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty confusing instrument, and finding your way around it in a really proficient way, I feel, is what a lot of students that have maybe mostly played other people's music to where it's like more of a mechanical replication.
Yeah.
That's what they struggle with.
Yeah.
You know, if I say, you know, play that kind of chord in exactly that position, they'll be like, and they'll try and sneak their way up there, you know, instead of going, all right, whatever, there's an A here, you know, there's an A there, there's an A there,
right,
whatever. Kind of like that. And then even within a structure like a chord, you know, where is which interval, what could you do if you're trying to alter it, where do you find those, and those kind of decisions. So I try to gauge how well they can find their way on the instrument and the biomechanics of it, which for me includes all technical aspects, and I'm not just, you know, not technique as in virtuous playing, but as in just, you know, what does it
So
look
would
like?
there be any kind of like a hands-on example of what you could do that you could show us
For what?
on the guitar? I don't know.
Probably.
Whatever.
There's
like
probably a lot of examples. Yeah.
Something that could be like an exercise. You
Well,
could teach our viewers an exercise that they could that could be helpful in learning to know their way around the fretboard.
Oh, I could do that.
Something like that.
Yeah, maybe I could touch on something like on a general opinion of mine about exercises, because like
Yes.
there's
Please.
exercises they feel a little bit like silver bullets sometimes. People are looking for simple solutions to problems that aren't simple.
Yeah.
And an exercise is sort of by nature a neatly packed deal, right? It's like you do this and you're going to get better.
Yeah.
That seems like a very attractive proposition.
But it's
I play this
not,
for a while and I get better.
okay. It's like going to a gym and using one of those devices to do this, and then real life it doesn't.
Well, but it's the analogy works perfectly, because you don't necessarily just get better by using, you know, a certain training machine. You get better because you do it in exactly the right way, and that requires focus.
Yeah, yeah.
And with the guitar, where it's not just about your hands doing the right movements, but it's about you paying attention to those movements.
Yeah.
And what actually makes you improve while you're doing an exercise is the attention, not the movement.
Yeah.
Because our hands, our bodily apparatus cannot tell when we're doing something right or wrong.
Yeah.
It gets used to everything we do with it. And if we, you know, there's all these stories from like my and all of our heroes from, you know, the 80s that are just like, so I kind of play guitar while I'm sitting on my sofa watching TV and stuff. And that is not, we know today, that's not really the way to go about it, because you're just wasting time.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because
you're noodling around, you're doing things that you already kind of know.
Yeah, either that,
sort of.
or you're doing the exercise, but you're kind of doing it in a bad way.
Yeah,
and not only are you not learning the right way, but your hands get used to doing it the wrong way.
Yeah,
so the far more efficient way of doing any exercise is to manipulate whatever material you're working on in a way that you can actually already execute it correctly.
Okay.
And sort of an example of that is the omnipresent play slower. But it could also be divided into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
You know, and if you manipulate the material you're working on enough, you right now could play any song in the world.
Right.
You might have to play it note by note.
Yeah.
But if you manipulate it enough, you could do anything. And what that means is you're never showing your hands anything that's wrong, basically.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You're always showing them what's right, and it might be a really slow process.
You just need to do it really slow and start like, yeah.
But the main point of focus for any exercise is to focus.
Yeah.
Like you have to actually make sure, and the way I do this with students is we sort of make a list of things they can possibly focus on, because as students are doing these exercises, they are using most of their focus for actually doing it.
Yeah.
And not enough for actually observing themselves.
Yeah,
if we're in a class, I'm doing the observing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if they have to do it themselves, they sort of go through a list. And by the way, that's not my idea. I got that from one of my teachers. This checklist, he called it.
Yeah.
Where you kind of go through it and you're like, okay, this time I'm only going to pay attention to economy of movement of my left hand, right? So as you're playing a scalar exercise or whatever, you're moving your fingers as little as possible.
Right.
And then the next thing could be, I'm going to make sure that I fret right in front of the fret this time. And that's not the same point of focus. It's a new point, although it's both related to the left hand. And now as you're doing it, you're making extra sure you're right next to the fret all the time.
Yeah.
And you're completely forgetting about everything else. That doesn't matter right now.
Yeah,
You're just focusing on that. And then you might switch over to the left hand, and you might do economy of movement here, or directionality of movement, or evenness in dynamics as you're doing the exercise, and those kind of things. So you're consciously directing your focus to certain aspects of the exercise to actually help you speed up your practice, although it feels pretty slow. But it means you're never taking a step back by developing bad habits, which actually ultimately speeds it up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I go about any exercise, no matter which one it is.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I would... How common is this? This kind of approach among guitar teaching? Would you say
it's hard to say. I mean, I know my teachers and a few buddies, more or less. So I couldn't say like on a wider scale how common
I guess
it is.
so, yeah.
But
well, you tell us.
Yeah.
Comment us. I mean, is your teacher doing it this way?
Yeah. Maybe you guys are more qualified to answer that than I am.
Yeah.
I know that I've gotten into a lot of the literature behind learning and how we as people learn, like the different ways of learning. And,
you mentioned yesterday a book. Is this the book that you mentioned? Is it something like...
Yes.
That book, what was that book again?
Well, yesterday we talked about two books, which I guess we can pass on as recommendations, right? It's Kenny Werner's Effortless Mastery and The Inner Game of Music by, I think, Tim Galway, written in combination with a bass player from Chicago, I think his name I said.
All right, okay.
Sorry. But both of those books talk more about the state of mind while playing and about how mental blockages can keep us from playing well, although we might be mechanically able.
Yeah,
and
which goes to any skill, goes to guitar making as well. I can tell. I mean, I can. When I'm listening to you, what you were explaining about focus and focusing on like observing yourself doing something, and kind of understanding that am I doing it the right way, or is there something wrong in my posture or positioning or the movement I'm doing. In my case, my work making guitar, I'm very much. I'm listening and kind of relating to my work on what you're saying. So it's kind of universal, teaching of learning of a skill.
Yeah, and I think it goes for any skill, or is very comparable for any skill that has a physical component to it, like where you're actually doing something, because. There's always there's terms like muscle memory and stuff, which sort of implies that your limbs can actually remember things, which they can't. It's up here, which is why the focus is so important. In fact, there's a couple of advanced students that I've tried to teach this idea of mental practice, which is actually not about what these books talk about, the state of mind while you're practicing, but it is actually practicing by envisioning yourself.
All right,
playing the instrument, which is an incredibly useful skill, because all you're practicing when you're practicing, after your hands are generally capable of doing the movements, is sending the right signals at the right time to your hands and arms to do things. And you can practice that without actually doing those movements by visualizing it.
I get that. And I there are certain things. Done that a lot.
And that helps more than you think. And it kind of sometimes it feels like, okay, but that cannot possibly be as effective as actually playing it. But sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
Like I've been on situations on the road where like, okay, never mind, can we like in between sound check and dinner, like, can we do this song tonight? And you're like, I don't know. And then you just kind of listen to it, which ties in with the ear training aspect. But like, you imagine yourself doing it, and sometimes that's enough, depending on how difficult the piece is. You know, sometimes that might be the trick.
The word ear training.
Yeah.
We talked about this morning over breakfast. You
Right.
talked about ear training.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think ear training is, like many things in music, teaching something that's sort of been being taught in a very antiquated way.
Yeah.
Which I gotta say, I mean, I learned it that way, so I can't entirely condemn it, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's the best way of doing it. Let me put it that way. Ear training, like what ear training isn't the skill. Ear training is what you do to train. It's the practice of acquiring a skill. And the first question you gotta ask yourself is, what is the skill you're actually trying to practice? And really, the skill is obviously listening in a really analytical and active way.
Yeah.
Which is where a lot of people already struggle, because the idea of active listening has sort of culturally disappeared over the past couple of years, because music has become the ultimate background to whatever, to our lives, right? We listen to it while we're out on a jog or on the bus or even when we're in the store, we're passively
which is nothing wrong with that.
But it has sort of people have lost the ability to actively hear because of that, or as a result of that. And I know you were saying earlier about how like listening to a record, like usually on vinyl for your family, is like still a thing that you do together. And I remember that as well. We as a family would sit down, and that time would be only about listening to music.
Yeah.
And that would be the thing. We're listening to music. We're not doing dishes and music's running. We are listening to music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And a lot of times these days when I'm working with people on ear training, the first problem is not that they, can't differentiate between, a major 9 and a major 13 chord or whatever. It's that they're not even able to focus in that way on music. So I'll put on a piece of music. I'll ask them after the piece is done, so what kind of instruments did you hear?
Yeah.
And then there'll be some tentative hand raising and like, I don't know, drums. And I showed him a song of a singer-songwriter that's accompanying himself on the guitar, and you're like, what were you listening to?
Yeah.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's not about the actual skill. It's about the habit of how you listen to music. That's the first thing I try to do with people. But then it goes further than just analytical listening. Ear training is also about a skill called auditization.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I made that word up, but I didn't. It is sort of the analogon to visualization.
Right.
The idea that you can, with the interpretative portion of your brain that actually, processes the sensory stimulus, can make yourself see something without visual input. Right? If I say pink elephant, you can mentally see the image of a pink elephant, although you're not seeing one.
Yeah.
And you can do the same thing with sound and with tones and with harmony.
Yeah.
And that is sort of the first step to developing real control over what you do as a musician. If you can imagine the sound without hearing it. Because then, when you execute it, you're not just doing what your hands are used to doing. You're doing something that your original creativity came up with, and your hands are just translating that and making it audible to everybody, what you already heard in your head before you put it out. And those are sort of two skills that I think you should be training when you're doing ear training. The analytical listening part, but also the auditization part of it.
Okay. Very interesting.
Sorry, I have a very brainy approach to this stuff. It doesn't work for everybody, but...
Well, we also talked about this earlier. Goes also to making music, making guitars. Our guitars are not for everyone. The music you're making, the music your band is making, is not for everyone.
No, and that's fine.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be for everyone, and that's also one thing that it's good to understand that's the richness of your teaching method doesn't go for everyone, but it goes for those who have a similar mindset as yours, that are brainy.
Yeah. And I think if it works, it really works.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you were saying in your case earlier. I mean, I think once you realize that it can't be for everyone, and that you don't have to try to be for everyone, you can focus on doing your thing, and you can actually increase the quality of what you're doing a lot by not trying to do it every way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same goes for the artistic side of things, for the teaching side of things, and for your side of things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it's great because it goes natural that way. It's not forced.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's kind of a happier approach, I think.
Yeah.
To not force it.
And not that I've entirely sort of penetrated that concept yet, but that does sort of sound a lot like what's being written about in the books we mentioned, you know?
Yeah.
Where if you're trying to force it, you're already making a pedagogical mistake, you know, because that's not the way to do it. And a very, very early possibility to prevent that from happening is choosing to study with somebody who gets you, who sort of has the same approach to things on a very fundamental level.
Yeah, and what I found in my work, which I think must be universal as well, goes to teaching guitar, is that when you are forcing that approach, then down somebody's throat, for whom it's not really the right approach, it doesn't end up well.
No.
You know,
it can make him lose interest in something that they had interest to begin with.
Yeah, it turns absolutely around. Like
yeah.
So yeah. We also talked in the morning about perfect pitch.
Yeah.
And you mentioned to me over breakfast, your take on that, or some ideas you had about that.
That's, I mean, also, there's a lot of things that I'm going to say is based on other people's research. I'm not a neuroscientist, you know, but there's people who have extensively looked into that. And I have my own experience teaching ear training. So just disclaimer, I'm not the science guy here. I'm just the teacher. But perfect pitch is sort of something, I think that's wildly being misunderstood. I mean, for the longest time, we thought it was hereditary. You either had it or you didn't.
Right.
And I can't definitively say that that's wrong, but our current understanding of it is that it is a learned skill, but it is a subconsciously learned skill because it can only be acquired in a phase of like a neural development that happens
at a certain age.
Yeah, that happens really, really early on in your development, which is, before the age of 1 or 1.5, maybe 2. And that's not something you have conscious control over. So it's not something you actively learn. It's something that your environment does to you.
Right.
Which, first of all, means that having perfect pitch is really nothing to be proud of. It's just if you have it, good for you. If you don't, you're not missing out, which is what I'm getting to in a moment.
So when you say about perfect pitch that we were for a long time under the impression that the understanding was that it's hereditary and it's nothing to be learned, but now it looks like in the light of the current research that it is learned, but it is actually something you cannot learn by will.
No. I mean, if you're trying to
if I would want to learn perfect pitch,
no,
so it's not, because I can't time travel to be zero, and
I don't think I could. I think that ship's completely sailed. And I know there's people that are frantically trying to learn that.
Is there schools, or is there
I don't think so.
That are kind of teaching that?
I don't hope so, because I think that would be entirely pointless. Also, I think it's a waste of time. Let's clarify perfect pitch. In Germany, we call it, or we translate it to absolute pitch, which I actually think is a better term for it, because it means you're free of a reference. You're not comparing tones to each other, which is relative pitch. That is something you can learn, but absolute pitch
we talked about this.
Yeah. So, and relative pitch is what I feel is most useful, because what we're trying to identify when we're analytically listening to things is sort of the timbre and the maybe let's call it the emotional content of harmony.
Right.
So if we're playing a simple major chord, the reason that sounds happy is because these notes are arranged in a certain way and they relate to each other in a certain way. That is what makes them sound the way they sound, and that's what makes it feel the way it feels to us. And all we need to do in order to identify that emotional quality and the theoretical name that goes with it is relative pitch.
Yeah.
You would not be able to, and also would not need to know that this was a G major. All you needed to know was that it was a major chord.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the same goes for any other. You make it minor. It's the relationship between the notes that matters. So it's about relative pitch. And trying to teach somebody or yourself absolute pitch or perfect pitch, I think is a waste of time.
It's a good waste of time. Okay. Yeah.
But the good news, relative pitch can be taught. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You might have a very, very solid predisposition because in that sort of formative time of your life, your brain has developed the ability to process a lot of minute sonic information, and you only have to learn the names and terminology for a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it might be that this sort of, I refer to it as like auditory sensitization hasn't happened yet.
Mm.
Then you have a long road ahead of you, but you can still learn it.
Right.
But that makes the decisive difference between teaching somebody music theory and teaching somebody ear training, because music theory is just logic.
Yeah.
And it uses parts of the brain that we already have developed. Yeah. Like, you know, if you're able to do third grade math, you can do music theory.
Yeah.
From the point of complexity, theoretical complexity.
Yeah.
But ear training, where we're teaching our auditory perception or training our auditory perception to differentiate between these chords and, you know, is there a 9 in there, is there not a 9 in there, that uses parts of our brain that you may not have developed yet.
Yeah.
So your brain needs to undergo a physiological change to learn that, which I think we can just kind of figure is way harder than using existing parts of your brain to process new information.
Yeah.
Which is why you go about teaching that very differently, I hope.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in one more magic word.
All right.
Talent versus practice.
Yeah. Talent. Yeah. Well, I read a really great quote the other day. It's not mine. I think it was Tommy Igoe, drum instructor, very famous one, who wrote a lot of important books. And he said, lazy talent gets its ass kicked. And I thought that was a really, really fitting way to put it. I think talent a lot of times is perceived as being purely something that you just kind of have. Again, sort of a hereditary idea.
Right, yeah.
You're born with talent. You're just naturally good at things. And I think that's part of the equation, but it is a rather small part of the equation. Because again, neuroscience, even when we're talking about like criminal behavior and everything, and no matter what part of our psyche, experts are in agreement that your environment has a lot bigger effect on all these things than your genes.
Yeah.
And I think the same can be said about talent. For the most part, when you realize that maybe your 6-year-old kid is pretty good at this, right?
Yeah.
He hears well, he can, intonate well, that is not necessarily genetics, or not mostly genetics. It's mostly things that are learned subconsciously in those formative years.
Right.
So I think the same thing applies to that as in the extreme case of absolute pitch.
Yeah.
If you're confronted with this sort of sensory input and your brain has to adapt to process that input, you force it to process that input at a really early age where your neural development is off the charts, then a few years later, maybe just 3 or 4, once you try for the first time to consciously learn this or teach it, you notice, wow, that's pretty easy. Because those neural pathways have formed. At a really early age, before you even realize they do, which is why then you perceive it as some kind of magical
talent
advantage. Talent. Where you're like, wow, you can just kind of do this. And I'm not insulted by the insinuation that I'm talented. It's just mostly not true, I think. I did practice a lot. So
so that's because it's something that years ago we made these series of videos like a mini documentaries with various performing artists, musicians, for our website. We had one with Marcus Setzer playing bass.
Right.
We had a number of people there, and one of them was Matthias Kupiainen from the metal band Stratovarius.
Oh, right,
and he
yeah.
was there kind of talking about this exact same thing, that, that talent is something that, wherever it is kind of sprung from, whether it's, inherited or learned at a very early age, it doesn't really make a difference. But let's say that, if you have that ability by nature, you seem to have that.
Wherever it comes from.
Wherever it comes from. If you have that, it will only take you to a point.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And if you don't,
well, actually, it doesn't even take you to any point. It just means you are better at obtaining information.
Yeah.
It
Right.
It's just like the IQ is just a measure of how good you are at acquiring new information. It says nothing about the amount of information you've acquired.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So and that's the same thing. If you never practice, your talent does nothing for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So then he went on to the same thing, that it's just hell of a lot of practice, and that's what kind of does it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
And I observed this both with students and also with my peers who I went to college with. We had talented guys, and I mostly saw this with drummers. We had a couple of guys, that were like really, really, really good.
Yeah.
But you would rarely ever see them in the rehearsal rooms, or because drummers usually don't have the luxury of practicing at home, right? So they would always block the rehearsal rooms at college.
Right, yeah.
And then within like 2 years, some of these guys that you didn't even waste a thought on early on, but then you kind of saw them, they'd show up at 6 a.m. and they'd start practicing before the first class, and then they'd stay late after the class, practice again. And sure enough, within 2 years, most of them had passed the lazy guys. They left them, eating their dust.
Yeah.
So,
So hard work pays off.
Yeah.
And that's the.
And that might sound really silly to state, like in this video, but we sort of do live in a time where 90% of the headlines of like social media posts is, "Hey, here's this hack for how you can learn something."
Right.
Or "This is the one secret that pros don't want you to know." I don't know how many times I've read that headline in the past couple of years. And the truth is, there's no secret, and there's no hacks, and there's no shortcut. And any moment you spend looking for one, you're wasting time.
Yeah. Well, I get those questions as well in my profession.
Yeah.
Making guitars, and a young aspiring, maybe or like enthusiastic youngster fantasizing of becoming a guitar maker has these same questions to me, and that can you give me some, how did you become so good, and how did you succeed, and can you tell me the secret?
Well, they expect you to flip a switch.
Yeah. And do this, and then it's gonna, and then the answer is of course the same, that it's just hell of a work, and and it then obviously, like one of my friends, John French, Twisted Sister, guitar player, always talks about the pool of passion. That that's the other thing, the motivation, that the drive, the enthusiasm, the passion, that wherever that comes from. Maybe you have the ability, the let's call it talent, but then the second equally important ingredient in basically enabling all those hours that you're going to use for practicing is the passion for whatever skill it is that you want to learn.
Well, I mean, that allows you to actually put in the hard work. If you don't have that, you're probably not going to put in the hours necessary. Right?
Yeah, and in JJ French's case, it's like the story. I don't know how familiar you're with that, but Twisted Sister is a band that started like in the mid '70s, and they were working super hard for 10 years to make it happen. And then that's when what he means with the pool of passion, that it's kind of like that's the fuel. The passion is the fuel, and it kind of it drives you, and it kicks your butt to keep on going and facing the failures, because that's the thing. That's another thing. There's going to be a lot of failures.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be
more
a
than
lot
successes, probably.
A lot of obstacles, and a lot of moments when you're thinking that, shit, this is not going anywhere. I'm through with this.
Yeah. And if you then don't have the passion, how are you supposed to
exactly
keep going?
Yeah,
right?
if the kind of the pool of passion runs out, the fuel runs out,
nothing more to burn.
Again, your talent doesn't help you, and obviously you're not going to have the energy to practice anymore, because you're going to need that passion.
Well, yeah, practice can be frustrating. I'd be lying if I said I was somebody who always enjoys practicing. Because another colleague, Benny Greb, who's also a drummer, said this: if you're practicing or if you're playing something you can already do, you're not practicing.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and that's also that feels like a very obvious thing to say, but I am guilty of this, where I'll use my practice time to kind of do things I can already do, either because I don't quite realize I should have moved on yet, or because it's just a lot more fun than to deal with things that you can't do and to have to constantly confront yourself with your inability.
Right.
But that is what practicing is. Yeah. And I do not always enjoy that.
Yeah.
But my passion suffices for me to, to put up with the occasional frustration, actually, that still comes with it for me today.
Yeah. So that's one of those things that I keep telling to younger generation wannabe guitar makers, that ask advice, and one of those pieces of advice that I'm repeatedly giving everyone is that I'm kind of asking them that how much do you want it?
Yeah.
Because you really need to want it a lot.
Yes.
You need to want it really a lot, and if you don't have that kind of like a that kind of forceful, that kind of the feeling that you have to.
I was going to say I would almost call it a necessity.
Yeah, a necessity. Yeah, there's not really a choice.
Yeah. If you feel like you have a choice, you should probably do something else. Yeah. The same goes for music.
Yeah.
Like if you feel like, I don't know, working in a bank could give you the same satisfaction in your life, then this is probably not what you should do.
Yeah.
You should do this, or probably that as well.
Yeah.
If you really feel like your back's against the wall, if you don't do this, then you're just not going to be happy.
Yeah.
That's when you do this. It's not a decision.
Yeah.
It's just a realization of a necessity.
Yeah. And kind of like the same idea in other words would be that, if you need a pep talk,
I mean, every now and then.
Pep talk is good. Pep talk is good. We do need pep talks. Okay, forget about that, guy. No. But I mean, it's kind of like if you need convincing, if you need a pep talk, to kind of like to someone else to talk you to do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like to me it kind of like works the other way around. I mean, my parents were against me becoming.
Oh, same. Yeah.
Because before wanting to become a guitar maker, my previous fantasy was the rock star, which was yours as well.
I think I said goodbye to the idea of actually becoming a rock star pretty early on, because I realized
when was that? What age?
I even considered this at age 16, roundabout.
Yeah.
And I think I did not have the illusion of actually being a rock star at that point.
Okay, well, I was naive enough.
But
16, age of 16,
age
of
16 was a little after your being 16.
Right, anyway.
So.
When I was 18, I was still convinced. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing for me. But anyways, then that kind of, and my parents were aware of that this is what I'm kind of thinking of pursuing, and they were sighing and cursing that, are you sure that should you get a real job? And and then one day I come home and I say that I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind completely. I'm going to be a guitar maker. And they're like, what the?
They're like, how's that any better?
First a rock star, then a guitar maker.
Yeah.
Could you do something decent with your life? Well, anyways,
I can imagine.
Yeah. So, but that's talking about passion, talking about that necessity. I mean, that was for me. I've often said in interviews or wherever, I've often said that for me, it was not like I chose to do this.
Yeah,
this
I also did.
profession chose me to kind of to go for it. But anyways.
Yeah, I fully agree.
Yeah. All right, Ruben, we have a 46 minutes
Nuts
into the interview, which felt like 15 minutes to me.
It kind of did, yeah.
But as a closure,
yeah,
could you play us something?
Oh yeah, sure.
A little bit.
Absolutely.
This is going to be the highlight of the product placement part of
the
it.
highlight of the product placement. I'm gonna just kind of let you hear.
It's there. I just turned the volume down here so it doesn't feedback. So you just go ahead.
Outro?
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
Ciao.
Some super fascinating topics there, right? I hadn't watched the interview until yesterday to refresh my memory a bit. And I had totally forgotten those book recommendations by Ruben, which I will fetch and read, both of them, for sure. And in the meanwhile, great comments, a lot of comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the last ones here, I'm going to bring up an additional piece of advice from one of our viewers. Peter, I put at least a little bit, 5 minutes, for example, of having fun with what I can do already well. Sometimes in the middle, sometimes at the end, gives some rewarding feel. That's right. That's right. And talking about active listening, did you guys get enough of that product placement stuff already? Because I think we need some more. Let's listen to some music, okay? Wait a minute. Ruben, thank you again so much for joining. Thanks for doing the interview with me, first of all, and joining with the chat. Greg, you commented earlier on about my cough. As you can see, it's not so great. The reason why it was so great, because that was a recorded interview like 6 months ago. Come on, man. But unfortunately, I'm still not 100% recovered. It kind of comes and goes. And the more I talk, the more it comes. So it's kind of a really like a bummer for me. Yeah, let's listen to some music. I think we should. Cosmic Latte is a trio with Burkhard Rupaner on drums. I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced, but anyways, Burkhard, Tim Steiner bass, and Ruben Roeh. Surprise, surprise, on guitar. The album is called Trapezia. I have the cover. Where's the cover? There's the cover. Cosmic Latte, Trapezia. And I thought that we could celebrate the album release and the successful interview with Ruben by listening together the newly released tune, a video also called Title Track. Not Trapezia, but Title Track. So, hey, active listening, remember? Put away the other stuff. Put away the other stuff. Thank you. So here we go. The baristas from space, ladies and gentlemen, Cosmic Latte and Title Track. Thank you, Cosmic Latte. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Burkhard. As you could see from the video, that in addition for all of us to get to enjoy a dose of heavy-duty musical talent and just fantastic piece of music, you were also exposed to some serious product placement. A double dose of product placement with Tim Steiner playing his Steam Classic bass, which, if I may say so, sounded fantastic in Tim's super capable hands. And Ruben with his mango green colored Valbucker Mojo. No words. What an amazing band. All three of them. Wow. Active listening, people. Works. Ah, yeah. Ruben, thank you. I'll bring your comment up. Links to the full record are in the video description. Check down below. There's the links where to buy the CD. I believe there's a vinyl coming a bit later. Don't know if you can pre-order that yet, but anyways, it's coming, I think. And the streaming links are there, and the social media links are there, and everything. So go follow everybody, and not only go follow Cosmic Latte, but also invite your friends and share to your friends, and so they will also follow, and they will notice this wonderful band. And I think there's going to be a tour as well. I don't know how much late is the or how much latency is there with the chat, but if Ruben, yeah, okay, vinyl is coming. Vinyl is coming. Delivery times are crazy. Looking at 7 months right now. Tell us something, Ruben, about the coming tour. Yeah, active listening, people. It works. A great idea to book some time. Seriously, book some time to your calendar to listen to music. Put it to the calendar instead of a TV show or whatever. Gather the family together and listen to an album of music. It works. I tell you, it's wonderful. It's a great habit to relearn if you've once upon a time done it and forgotten to do it anymore these days. Or if you've never learned it, you can still learn it. You've learned a lot of great techniques for learning new stuff with this live stream today. Okay, tour is in the works. No dates yet, but definitely 2023. Gonna do as much of Europe as we can manage for now. That's great. I already gave you some ideas for great clubs in Finland. So really looking forward when that's gonna happen. Yeah. All right. I think we've passed the deadline of 1 hour. It's time to wrap it up for today. Special regards to Greg. As you can see, unfortunately, I'm still coughing, so I guess this means you have no other choice than send out your special Swiss remedy, the one you wrote me about. I'll hold you to that promise, man. Not just kidding. I'll be fine. But I'm curious, anyways. Special Swiss remedy. I think that's what you wrote. I'm curious. Okay, guys. I'm already working hard on the next episode. I am, but I'm not 100% sure if I can make it till next Wednesday. Honestly. It's a bit more intense topic for me to prepare. And in addition to that, my cough isn't getting better, and I'm just thinking that maybe I should rest my voice for a little bit. But I can already share the topic with you. Next time we'll talk about wood. We'll go back to the basics of the materials of making guitars. We'll talk about wood, and even more precisely, we'll talk about ebony, about Africa. We'll talk about tradition. We'll talk about sustainability. Some heavy stuff. Okay. So either it's going to be next Wednesday or perhaps the following one. Okay? Okay. Good. Thank you for your understanding. And for now, it's time to say goodnight. So, thank you everyone. Thank you all of you. I didn't mention you all by name, but thank you everyone for joining. People, take care of your loved ones. Be well. Stay safe. Peace, love, and good music. Good night.